Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and The Daily Critique. Today's image was created by Patty. Patty recently participated in the workshop I taught on Whidbey Island called The Spirit of Whidbey Island. That workshop was sponsored by the Pacific Northwest Art School. I want to say a big thank you to them and all the people who participated in our workshop. We had a fantastic time, and Patty and other workshop participants have been generous enough to share the images that they created in the workshop with the whole Mindful Eye community. So we're going to, for the next couple of weeks, next few weeks, be working with quite a few of the images from the workshop on the Daily Critique and in other areas of the website. This image came out of an assignment where we were looking at creating images that had a real strong sense of near, middle, and far. Patty chose to shoot inside of a fort at Fort Casey State Park. She's done a really wonderful job here of getting low with a wide-angle lens, which is helping to make the foreground of the shot seem a lot more real, like we can move towards it. Patty's also done a great job of choosing a subject matter here in her foreground that ends up creating a series of leading lines that really gives a sense with both line and shape of the foreground sort of being palpable and near, and then also leading us out into the rest of the shot. There's some really interesting subjects I want to talk about in just a second that are out in the middle ground. And then there's something that's real classical here that could be a good takeaway from the video today. When you look at this image, you get a sense of the majority of the light, or the most dramatic light, being back here in the background, or the far reaches of the shot. And in architectural interiors, that's a classic. Underlighting the foreground and having your brightest light in the background can really help to create an illusion of near to far and pull the viewer all the way through to the back rooms of the shot. Patty has that happening here. There's some really beautiful color potential here, just a real strong sense when I look at this image of quite a few earth tones and sort of color neutrals, and then the idea of either cyan and tan or blue and orange. And so really beautiful in terms of warm and cool. One of the things that I talk about quite a bit is the idea of looking for archetypal concepts to include as subjects, and then in our editing to sort of push towards those. And when I look at this shot, there's something about it that almost immediately makes me think of a tomb. When I look at these subjects over here, when I look at the shapes that are here, and I see, when I look over here, a very powerful archetypal figure. We could say a hooded apparition, a ghost, all kinds of things that people might see in this shape right here. But I think a lot of people, if they stop long enough to consciously take this in, that you get a sense of a figure of some type, and then the environment tends to start to push the stories that you might make up about this figure, this archetype, in one direction or another. There's other shapes here that I've already mentioned that are archetypal. There's just so many shapes on the wall back in here, if we were to look at a bigger print of this, that could start to remind us of archetypes like human form or faces, things that human beings have been putting on walls for thousands of years in the form of petroglyphs or pictographs, so on and so forth. A lot of things to really enjoy about this image. When I think about a perfect world variation for the image, there's one main thing that I want to do to this image that can be a real powerful takeaway from the video today. I'm going to make it much darker. One of the things that digital sort of encourages us to do, which can be good, so because we get a histogram, we get this really sort of beautiful tool for determining our exposure. We get this with every shot. And so much of the time we're thinking about exposure in terms of wanting detail. In both the darkest areas of the scene down here with the black point and the brightest areas of the scene, we can end up with histograms that include information everywhere, and that can leave us with shots that are very open. And if we have shots that are very open, where there's quite a bit of either middle, low mid, or high mid values in the image, can take away from contrast. It can also take away from the sense of a feeling of light. When I look at this image, I see the potential for there to be a very dramatic feeling of flow of light. For light to register, we need dark, we need shadow. For sound to register, we need space around it. And one of the things I think digital is pushing us towards is images where there's not enough space around the main ideas. When we start to get detail everywhere, then we don't have zones of emptiness. We don't have zones of quiet. We don't have zones where there's very little information for other things to come out of. And so one of the big takeaways from the video today is I really encourage you, every image that you work on, to go to curves. You could do it in levels too, and just play around with dramatically darkening and lightening all of your images. You don't want to underexpose in the camera, in my opinion. You don't want to do that, because when we underexpose to the digital camera, we will end up with a lot of pixels that are down in here, and these pixels don't have much information. So we want to expose to the right. That's a great caveat in terms of exposure. It's a really good guideline to follow the vast majority of the time in terms of getting a lot of information on original capture. And then underexpose in post. And the tough thing about exposing to the right is that it can keep us from either remembering to underexpose in post, or the version that we look at can bias us so that it can be very, very difficult to underexpose. And we also have our memory of every scene, and unless we're talking about shooting in very, very low light, then the human eye has the ability to see an outrageous amount of detail and an outrageous range of contrast. And so it can be hard to underexpose after the fact because of two things. If we're exposing to the right, the file is open to begin with. To get there, we have to go a long way, and it can go against our memory of the scene. If you're not a documentary photographer and you're interested in more of a traditional approach to photography, which is where there's capture and then there's darkroom work, and we're sort of giving ourselves the freedom to be as creative as we want in the darkroom, then really encourage you to make this move with all of your images. You may be shocked to see how many images may look very good overexposed and dramatically underexposed. And if you're really trying to say something dramatic about light, a lot of times underexposing your images in your post-processing could be a very good move to make. I'm going to skip these two layers right here and come back and talk about them. And this layer, in fact, what I've done is I have underexposed using curves. I've darkened the image quite a bit. I'm going to option click on the mask here and show you that I didn't apply that change everywhere. I applied it locally to all at one time darken and also try and make contrast more dramatic. And I'm making those changes based on two things. I'm trying to accentuate the feeling of the flow of light that we could see in the original capture, and I'm also trying to bring forward this really powerful archetypal idea. I came in and I did a levels adjustment to push even more the contrast in those areas where there was a sense of light or form, and then I did it again. I always kind of overdo things for the video to really try and make the point that I'm making very clear, and so that may be a little bit too far, but that's okay for the sake of the video. Let's just option click and we can see what we've done so far. We're really starting to get a sense of light coming out of areas that are darker. I came in and I popped the color to have more fun with the idea of cyan and tan and orange and blue. And then I did two other things to this image. One of the things that I did was I came in and I did a little bit of digital gardening on all these areas of rocks and grit and gravel that are sitting on the floor of the fort here to just simplify. And here's the layer where I did that. And some people are quite shocked when in editing and teaching a workshop or doing the daily critique, when just a few high contrast ideas are removed, how much simpler the overall structure of the image it can be. And because I am open to changing image content, I do quite a bit of this digital gardening. If an area is representing high contrast and it really doesn't have anything at all to do with the other relationships in the image that I'm trying to push, then I will garden those things out of the image. It can really help to simplify. And the other thing that I did was I took this archetype right here, rescaled it, and dropped it into this shadow here. There's no information in the shadow. That shadow is completely black. And having areas of very deep shadow with just a little bit of detail can really help to draw the viewer in, particularly in much bigger prints. There's a lot of information that we could layer back in there, so I just chose this, but there are a lot of other things that we could do. And there's that change, and we could sort of turn that up or down depending on how much, how literal we wanted to make that and how much we wanted to pull the eye to look into that shadow area. Here's where we started. Here's where we ended up. Love to hear your thoughts about the critique today. Again, I want to say a big thank you to Patty for being generous enough to sharing her really beautiful architectural interior image from Fort Casey with us here on the Daily Critique. And I want to say a big thank you to you for being here. Hope to see you again soon on another episode of the Daily Critique.